Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, talk about a recent piece of nerdy entertainment, relatively recent in this case, and we look at it in depth. So we talk about what we like about it, what we don't like, what they shot for and hit and missed, and also bigger topics like tone, theme, message, and so on. That means we have to talk about it in depth, and that means we have to spoil it. Hence all the warnings around here. What we're spoiling tonight is Encanto, the Disney animated musical that dropped in theaters in November and on Disney Plus the day before Christmas, this last Christmas. We're just now getting around to it. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, a first-person shooter as a cosplay photographer on Facebook and Instagram, Burley_adopter on Twitter, a couple of other places, doing a bunch of other things. Right out of the gate, let me start by apologizing for my voice. I've had a head cold since Wicked Comic-Con. So curse you, whoever gave me the head cold. And I've been fine with it through most of the week, but today it's just kicking my butt. So this will be a short show for those of you who are waiting to jump in with your commentary. And for those who have already joined the chat, Priocchio, welcome to the chat. Bo7 De Castro, welcome to the chat. Yeah, I like this movie from Disney. It makes me laugh. It's funny. It's a very likable movie. But we'll get into that in more depth. Before we do, what we're going to do first, Byron, welcome to the chat anyway. Well, we're going to talk about Bruno. So, hate to ruin it for you, but yes, we are going to talk about Bruno. Before we get into it, let's first talk about our Twitch channel. If you have a Twitch account, please join us at twitch.tv/nerdcaliber, the URL that's on your screen there. And consider following us. We'd love to have you. We'd love to build our following on Twitch like we have very successfully on Facebook Live and on the YouTubes. So what is Encanto? I already mentioned it's an animated musical, songs written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, that created by Disney Animation Studios, that dropped on November 5th, I believe, in theaters, and then hit Disney Plus on December 24th of this past year. Since it hit Disney Plus, it has been at the top, if not the very top in any given week, of the Nielsen ratings of streamed content. It still is. To the extent that it has reached 1.2 billion minutes of view time, according to Nielsen. So it is very popular, very highly rated. The Metacritic score is right up there. It's a very popular movie, and it is about the Madrigal family. So the story starts with Byron says surface pressure is such a Lin-Manuel song. So before I get into the description of what the movie is about, yeah, it and We Don't Talk About Bruno, which is even the bigger hit, both reached the top of the Billboard Hot 100 charts, pop charts. And We Don't Talk About Bruno stayed there for quite a few weeks, and I think Surface Pressure was only there for a week or two before dropping back down. But still, that's huge. So what the story is, 50 years before the actual events of the story and the people that we're seeing in here, the Abuela Madrigal, the grandmother in the purple holding the candle in this image, with her husband and her two children, the main character, Mirabel, who's the one in the floral print dress with the very curly dark hair, next to Abuela. So Mirabel's mother, aunt, and uncle. Mother Julieta right next to her. Aunt, the one with the almost blonde hair in the yellow with the umbrella. and then Uncle Bruno, who is not in this picture, and for reasons that'll be made clear later on. All were escaping a military conflict in Colombia. They were fleeing into the jungle mountains, and they unfortunately ran into that conflict again, and Arbuella's husband, Mirabel's grandfather, was killed. At that time, this candle that she had been carrying just grew in light and then became something magical and protected the family from the rest of the military and showed them a way further into the mountains, into this valley, which the candle then made the mountains that surrounded the valley even higher and steeper, basically blocking them off from the rest of the country. And the candle then created this magical house, which is the house behind them there, that they all call Casita, and it's a sentient house. It responds to their commands, not with no verbal commands of its own, but it does things like the floor moves and so on. Since then, everybody who is born in the Madrigal family has, at the age of 5, been given some sort of special gift. So Julieta, Mirabel's mother, again in the sort of aqua dress right next to Mirabel, has the ability to create food that can heal anybody. Her sister Peppa, the semi-blonde one, her mood controls weather locally around her. And then again, Bruno, and one of the reasons why we don't see Bruno is that his gift was he could see the future. So, and this is all working out, the way it's supposed to until 10 years before this story takes place. Mirabel, at the age of 5, was supposed to go up and, touch a door in the in Casita, which would give her a gift, and she didn't get a gift. So the story takes place basically when her nephew, Peppa and Felix's son, Antonio, the one who's sitting on the leopard there, it's his night. He's 5 years old, and he's to get his gift. Everybody's worried about whether it will happen. It turns out he does, and his gift is to be able to speak to animals. But while everybody is celebrating, Mirabel sees a vision of the house, cracks appearing in the floor, in the walls, working its way up towards where the candle, which now sits in a window where everybody can always see it, starts to flicker and dim. And so the story basically is her trying to figure out, is something going wrong? If so, what is going wrong? How does she figure it out? And then, how can she help it when she eventually comes to realize that, everything about the house is very deeply connected to specifically her. And that's basically the story. So what do I like about this? Byron says Surface Pressure is a better song. There you go. I found We Don't Talk About Bruno to be more engaging, but I don't know that I would argue that. I think they're both really good songs. So what I liked about this, first off, I love the character design and animation. I think this has a very almost like Ratatouille sort of look to it, even though that's a completely different setting and so on. But the way they're doing the faces and the eyes and the general shape and everything reminds me of that, except obviously with the color palette of Latin America. Not only in the people and the characters, but also in their clothes and the houses, the flowers, the jungle, everything. It's very pretty to look at, even in the darker moments of the show, of the movie. And I don't mean darker in like DC Universe darker. I mean in a physical place where it's darker like this. That's Bruno, by the way, and Mirabel. Even in places like that, where you've got muted colors and the browns and muted greens and so on, it's still it's a very engaging and pretty thing to look at. I like the story. I think it's very interesting. So it's been described as magical realism in some places that I've read, and it's too completely a fantasy to be magical realism. I mean, it touches on it a little bit in that, the military action, that happens 50 years before the story takes place could be referencing an actual military conflict that happened in Colombia. And in that case, the magical realism aspect of it is, it holds up, or the description of it as a magical realism piece holds up. But once they get past that, it is straight up all fantasy. Everybody's got these, special magical gifts. It's a fantasy tale. That just happens in this case be set in what's probably something very close to modern day Colombia, a real nation. It's just that this, valley, this Encanto, obviously doesn't exist. Byron, the Madrigal Familia is full of waifus. Yes, it is. Which is another, nice thing. And a great variety of waifus. Mirabelle is just cute as a button. Let's go back to the first image here. Her oldest sister, Isabel, which is the one in the lavender with the long flowing black hair and the flowers. Her gift is she can create flowers or make plants grow anywhere. And then sister in between them is Louisa, the very strong one all the way over there to the left. But then there's also all the way to the other end, Felix and Peppa's oldest child, Dolores. Lots of waifus in here. The story is sort of a magical realism, but more just straight up fantasy story. It's engaging. It's told fairly well. It is, in my mind, too short. But I'll get into that in the things I didn't particularly like about it. Another thing I like about it is the animation itself. The animation, not just the character designs and the look of it and the color palette and so on, but the animation is really smooth, really well done. Where's this scene with Mirabelle and Dolores? Probably should have labeled these better. There it is. This is from one of the musical numbers, and during this musical number, there's just a little bit of the very quick sort of, not quite flamenco, but, flashing the skirt kind of dancing. All of the animation throughout the whole thing is, particularly smooth, but this is wonderful. The way the skirts move. The animators did a fantastic job. When Antonio gets his powers and his room, everybody, when you get your own room when you get your gift, and the rooms are just enormous in size. They're like the TARDIS. And they all reflect whatever the gift is. Antonio's is this sort of interior jungle space with a big tree that's growing up in the middle of it. But the tree is like everything, it's got multiple platforms for like platform jumping, and then there's an actual slide. It's a kid's dream jungle playground kind of place. And all of that action with the animals, because all of these animals show up the minute he can start speaking to animals. Although they don't speak, so this isn't like, Aladdin or The Lion King or anything like that, where animals actually speak. He can understand them. They don't actually speak any language that, we can understand clearly. They growl or chirp or squeak or whatever. And that animation of the animals moving around in there, and that one big scene where Antonio was just having a ball showing enjoying his new room with his animal friends is, again, just, beautiful. The animation is slick and smooth. It's really well done. The songs, Byron's already talked about, Surface Pressure. We Don't Talk About Bruno is, one of the biggest hits of the end of last year as a pop song. And so it's, the songs are really good. They are fairly typical Lin-Manuel Miranda. They're a lot more Moana than they are Hamilton. There's very little rapping in this. But even then, they don't exactly tie into Moana's sound either. I mean, he's done a pretty good job of keeping the feel of Latin music in this, and in his songs, of all the songs in here. So let's see. So the songs I really like. The voice acting is good, and I know almost none of the voice actors. Mirabelle is played by Stephanie Beatriz, from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Boy, took me a second there. And other than that, and John Leguizamo is Bruno, who is, of course, wonderful as always, because he will always be wonderful. But the rest of them are all, as far as I can tell, Latin American actors and actresses. That's not true. Mirabelle's dad is Wilmer Valderrama. But other than that, it's all people I have no idea, including there are two people, Dolores, was it Dolores or Isabel, who is the... let me look real quickly. Dolores, who's in this image here, is an actor, singer, whatever, somebody with just one first name, Adasa. And the Mariano, who Isabel is supposed to marry, the hunk here, is, I can't remember his name. He also has just a single name. He's a super well-known sports star in Latin America and South America. So that's another thing that's really good about it. The voice acting is solid, is strong. They do an excellent job. Particularly Stephanie Beatriz as Mirabelle. She's really good. Leguizamo is also really outstanding. Let's see what else. And just the general feel of it. It's a feel-good kind of movie. It's the comedy is solid. There's some really good laughs in here. There's a lot of chuckles. Almost nothing that they aim for as a comedy bit misses, which is good. You never look at something and kind of go, ooh, didn't quite land. So a lot of it's good physical animation comedy, physical shtick, which they do really well. So what didn't I like about it? Not much. I've got a couple of things, a couple of them that are structural, and then one that's a nitpick, a huge logic hole, which it's one of those things where it would take like 2 bits of dialogue to fix this. Why didn't you do it? So we'll start with one of the structural things is it is too short. It's an hour and 42 minutes. It could definitely use more time to expand on some of the story elements so that they become a little bit more believable. And yes, it's a fantasy story, but one of the things about particularly magical realism is you have to believe the realist stuff to be able to accept the magical stuff. When... and again, spoiler chat, we're spoiling everything. Spoiler. Warning, spoiler. When at the end, or near the end, when at the big, climax of, the denouement, Mirabelle ultimately winds up finally yelling at her abuela for being essentially a rigid, controlling, kind of uncaring person. And the house does finally crack and collapse, and the candle goes out, and everybody loses their gifts. And Mirabelle flees, and she winds up actually leaving the Encanto, leaving the valley. One of the mountains actually splits, and so there's now an easier path out. She winds up leaving the valley, and her grandmother catches up to her and finds her when she's basically sitting on the riverbank at the ford where they crossed and the military caught up and killed her grandfather. And the grandmother basically, says, "You're right. I've been too rigid. This is, a lot of this is my fault. I'm very sorry. I didn't treat you properly. I was so worried about us losing our gifts that I didn't see, what it was doing to the family." Except nobody spelled it out that clearly to her, and this is literally the next scene. So Mirabelle yells at Grandma, and we cut to, there's a scene where everybody's running around yelling for Mirabelle to try to figure out where she went. And Byron says it definitely needed more world building. Yeah, they could really have explained more of the powers better and so on. But when Grandma catches up to her, suddenly in that very short amount of time, she's had a complete 180, and changed point of view. And it's like, okay. It could have taken, maybe another 2 minutes to have a scene in which somebody else, like Bruno, sits down and says, "Hey, you know what, Ma? Mirabelle's right. And, this isn't on her. This is on you." But no, she just, Mirabelle yells at her, and then, one scene later, she's suddenly realized the error of her ways over the last 50 years that she's been doing it exactly the same way. But anyway. So that was just, there are things like that were just too facile, that just went too easily for the story, that, just a couple of, half a scene could have explained all of that and made it more believable, made it more grounded, and, just made it a better story. The one nitpick is one of those things that could have been solved. So Dolores has super hearing. And again, Dolores is this one here. Mirabelle's cousin. Dolores has super hearing. To the extent that she complains at one point that she was hearing Louisa's right eye twitch in the middle of the night, and it kept her from sleeping. So from whatever gigantic room Dolores has, which we never really see, through however many gigantic rooms are separating Dolores and Louisa's room, to Louisa's room, she can hear Louisa's eye twitch. And in the 10 years since Bruno has disappeared, and he's actually just been hiding in the walls in between the rooms in Casita, she's never heard him in the walls stealing food, talking to rats. Never. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. One line. When, at one point when Bruno is coming out of the walls to, help Mirabelle, he stops and he looks back through, one of the openings and says to Casita, "Thank you for keeping my secret all these years." And done. We now know that Casita, which has all the power, really, has been sheltering him, has been keeping him hidden. That's all they needed to do. That literally, that would have been, he pauses, he looks over, and "Thank you for keeping my secret." 4 seconds. 4 seconds worth of a little bit more animation and one more line for John Leguizamo to say, and, nobody, including myself, are sitting here going, how did Dolores not hear him for 10 friggin' years? But anyway. So those are really my only gripes with this thing. It's too short. It needed to be expanded in both the world building, as Byron said, and also to expand on the actual story to make parts of it that happen more believable and less jarring, to go from this emotional stage and storytelling stage to this one with nothing in between. And that, Dolores nitpicked. And that's it. There's nothing else I particularly didn't like about it. So, tone. The tone is pretty light. Even at the beginning, when Abuela is explaining how they fled and how the magic was created and how Encanto was created and so on. And, we have to find out that her husband was killed, that Mirabel's grandfather was killed. They don't even use that word killed, and I can't remember exactly what they say, but basically that, his story ended at the river or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, that's kind of dark. Bruno's tower, which is his room, is actually a tower. It has elements that can seem dark at times and maybe a little dangerous, but they're not really, and they're not really dangerous. Maybe a really little kid might be a little scared that, Mirabel's going to fall off a cliff or something. But, only little kids. And otherwise, other than that, it's very light. It's very... the music reflects the tone of it. Even the songs about, difficult subjects like surface pressure and how Louisa, the strong one, is always being asked to do things that, that require her to be both physically strong but emotionally strong, to be very supportive, and always be the one who's helping, is still a pretty upbeat, light song in tone, or musical tone, even if the subject matter is a little bit deeper. The theme, and I actually read this somewhere, that one of the writers, the primary writer, and one of the co-directors, has said the theme is about, truly understanding other people, really knowing them. And that's really very much the obvious and on the surface theme. It's there for sure. Bruno disappears because everybody thinks he's causing all of the horrible things with his predictions, and it's not really the case. He's just seeing things, and then they become essentially self-actualizing, problems for these people. Arbuella not seeing and understanding Mirabel, and not really seeing and understanding, what's going on with her family, particularly Louisa, or Isabel, the beautiful one who is supposed to marry Mariano, who really doesn't want to get married to him, and maybe not anybody. And Byron says, the message to me is listen to your family regardless of age. Well, yeah, I guess yes. And that's kind of what she was saying, that, you've got to understand other people, that, you've got to truly come to know them. And to do that, you have to listen to them. And that is definitely an on-the-surface, theme here. Particularly, Abuela doesn't listen to Louisa. Then again, Louisa doesn't really complain much, but there are things you can hear that could have told you that. But also doesn't listen to Mirabel straight up when Mirabel tells her there are problems. But I think on a deeper level, the theme here is, what's the way I want to put this? I guess, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know that I can make an argument for the theme that I was going to come up with. So the message is, as Byron said, listen to your family, but also, or anybody, get to know and understand them. Really understand them before you make any sort of decisions about, their future, their life, or anything like that. And for that, it's not a terribly deep or innovative message. It's told well, but if there's not any really deeper subtext that you can look at it and go, ooh, okay, well, that was really also about this. To some extent, you could say that there may be a subtext there about marginalized people. Mirabel without a gift is definitely the not normal one in that family of special people. And there could be some sort of subtextual message there about not treating, say, neurodivergent people or atypical thinkers in the way Abuela was treating Mirabel as, somebody less than all of the rest of the family. But that's it. That's the roundup. Would I recommend it? Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good, entertaining movie. It's got a couple of problems, but those problems are mostly a lack of something as opposed to a mistake or a problem. And it's a fun time. Great music. I would definitely recommend it. I would probably put it at a 7 out of 10. I think it could be higher if it was longer and we had more story to flesh out both the world and the people in it. Which would also ideally solve that one really stupid logic problem about Dolores. But yeah, 7 out of 10. And that's it, folks. I told you it was going to be a quick one. I'm going to sign off very quickly and go back to blowing my nose nonstop. But if you get a chance, go check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. We'd love to have you as a patron if you do want to be so. Just 3 tiers, $2 is the lowest tier. Ivan, it seems a little like not letting other people's expectations run your life, maybe a message. Yes, that is true. You can certainly say that, although Mirabel makes a... So the people who didn't decide to let that happen are Mirabel and Bruno. Bruno leaves, and Mirabel fights against it. And ultimately, it winds up... Again, the spoiler, big spoiler, the community comes back and builds them a new house. Over the 50 years, a non-magical community has grown up around their magical house. And the community comes back and helps them build their house, and they give Mirabel the doorknob to install on the front door, and as soon as she touches it, all of the magic comes back. Which they don't explain how that happens, but it's a really cool ending. Mirabel is good about it, but everyone else falls into the patterns given to them. That is true. Except Bruno. Bruno's decision to how to not live up to others' expectations is to just leave. Well, sort of leave. Harry Brady, welcome to the show, and I'm sorry we're wrapping it up. I've got a bad head cold, and so it's only a half an hour show. But anyway, upcoming Monday is Anime Octane, and we will be looking at the first look at the spring 2022 season. What looks good, what we can recommend to watch, what you should avoid watching, and what's probably going to just be blah. So check us out Monday for Anime Octane, Nerd Week Live next Tuesday, and then next Thursday's Full Fat Spoiler Chat will be DMZ, the 4-episode HBO Max series that is an adaptation of the critically acclaimed graphic novel series DMZ. A near future semi-dystopian story. And I'm very much looking forward to that. So coming up, we will be at PAX East in a little over, exactly a week. 21st through the 24th, PAX East in Boston at the Boston Convention Exhibition Center. On Saturday, the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. is the Cosplay and Photography Shootout. If you want to be a participant, show up early. If you want to just show up and watch a bunch of really creative people run around like crazy, that's always fun too. Panelists are myself, the guy who thought up this whole thing, Greg, Wonderland of Photography, Gogo Incognito, and Jabri of Spectra V3. It's going to be a ball. So, we will see you at one of those upcoming events. And then, of course, in the end of May, Anime Boston, here in Boston at the Heinz Convention Center. I'll be running the photo department. So you will find me in room 102, the Cosplay Photography Suite. That's where you will come to get your Nerd Caliber photos, which will also be the Anime Boston photos. They will go up on both sites. And so we will see you at one of those upcoming events or an upcoming show. Thank you all for the excellent chat. Good night, and stay safe.